Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of my vlog on how to install Linux on a virtual machine. The previous episode, which there'll be a link down in the comments or in the description, shows how to set up a virtual machine. And now we're going to use that virtual machine that we set up last time to install Linux Mint. So what I did, I left off on the last video booting up into the live ISO image of Linux Mint 17.3. So we're basically in Linux live CD mode. So this isn't the install, but from here you could either run it like this to test, or we can actually do a Linux install. And this little icon here that looks like a CD-ROM, it says install Linux Mint, is pretty much all we have to do is double click that. And the installer should load up. Select your language. We're going to select English. Of course, if you speak a different language, feel free to pick the one you like. Hit continue. It checks to make sure we have enough disk space. It wants at least 9.4 gigs and that we're connected to the internet, and we are. So we got check marks. Continue. Since this is a virtual machine, I'm going to go ahead, erase disk, and install Linux. This will make my whole virtual disk that we set up the Linux partition. And the other options are to encrypt the Linux installation. We're not going to do that. Use LVM. LVM is nice to use if you have a lot of if you have a lot of external partitions and stuff. You can. One of the nice things about LVM is you can resize the partition on the fly if you need to. I use that a lot in my work environment, but for a home machine you really don't need it. So I'm not going to use any of these features. So the next thing to do is click install now. It's warning me that it's going to format my drive. Now remember, this isn't your real hard drive. This is the virtual drive that we created in the last episode, and it will so it's not going to affect your current system. Now if you're doing this on a new computer and you're not doing it inside a virtual, it will format the hard drive, so be very careful. A lot of times there's another option that'll pop up. If you want to dual boot Windows and Linux, it'll ask you if you want to install Linux beside Windows, but since it didn't see Windows on there, it's not giving me that option. So we're going to continue, and now we wait. Okay, we pick our time zone. I'm on the West Coast, so Los Angeles is my time zone. You can change the time zone, so if we were over on the East Coast, we could select a time zone in the East Coast. So here's New York, and we'd hit continue and it would set my clocks according to that, but we're in the Los Angeles area, so continue. Select the keyboard layout. US English is fine for what I have. I think it detects what you normally run, but if you're running a different keyboard, you can select it here. Continue. Now we enter our name, so I'm going to put Fratm. The host name, the computer name, you can call your computer whatever you want. I'm going to leave it as Fratm VirtualBox, just so that I know what I'm logged into. My username is Fratm. I'll set a password. Some people like to have their computer set up so that it automatically logs them in when they turn it on. That's fine if you're not worried too much about security. I prefer to require a login and password. I have kids and I don't always want them into my computer, so I leave required my password to log in. That will give me a login prompt, and where you select your username and enter your password, and then encrypt my home folder. That is useful if you have very personal data and you're worried about someone getting a hold of the computer, getting into your computer, and you don't want them to be able to just see your data. I don't encrypt. I don't keep anything personal on my computers. So continue. Now it's installing. This is the easy part. Now I chose Linux Mint. I've had people ask me why I like Linux Mint so much. I used to be a big Debian fan in the early days. It was my favorite distro. I still prefer Debian for um, personal server installs, although at my work we run CentOS. But I liked the apt style package managers. I switched to Ubuntu for my home installs years ago and ran that, and then Ubuntu switched to their desktop. Their primary desktop was Unity, and then there was issues with privacy in Ubuntu. So back then, I switched to Linux Mint, and I liked the Cinnamon desktop a lot. It's basically GNOME 2. I think it's GNOME 2. And it's just a real. I like things simple, and I don't need fancy widgets all over the place. So I do like it. It runs on the Compiz renderer, so you can get the 3D effects if you want them, and it's speedy. So it's the main reason why I switched to Cinnamon. Now, a secondary reason, or I mean Mint. The secondary reason why I switched to Mint was because of codec support. In Ubuntu and other Linuxes, you have to find and install all the codecs out there for your MP3 players, your movie players, your DVD stuff. I just hate looking for that stuff because it just can be a pain in the butt. All that stuff is built into Linux Mint, and you don't have to worry about it. It's literally, to quote another operating system, it just works. And there's a lot of support for it. Even if you can't find Linux Mint specific support, you'll find Ubuntu support, because it's basically what Linux Mint is based on. And then if you can't find Ubuntu support, you can find Debian, which is the grandfather of all those two OSs and others. So it basically goes Debian to Ubuntu to Mint. And Linux Mint has a direct version called Linux Mint Ubuntu version, or Debian version, and that just skips all the Ubuntu stuff and is just a Linux Mint built on Debian. I have not tried it, but I've heard that it's a pretty decent distribution, but not something I've had time to try. I just stick with their regular distros. This little drop down here will show you a little bit of what it's doing while it's installing. I like to look at it just because it's kind of geeky and see what they're installing and what they're doing, and going from there. Also, there's these little sliders that kind of tell you about the things that Linux Mint can do. See, this right here is one of the things I was talking about. Insert a DVD and enjoy a movie. Watch high-definition videos with VLC. That comes built in, already installed, where the other Linux distros you have to find it and install it, and sometimes you have dependencies that you have to solve. This is just there. Okay, so that was the install. It's pretty much complete. You have two choices. You can continue testing, and this is still the live CD, so it's going to be kind of slow, or we can restart and run in our system. So I'm going to go ahead and hit restart, and that'll get us into our freshly installed Linux Mint system. Okay, as you can see, it is asking me for a login name and password. And so I select my username, and then I can enter my password. And then click OK. First time Linux Mint runs, I find that it's slow to pull up the desktop, but the next time I log in, it'll be fast. It's like it's setting up your cache directories and all your home directory stuff. First thing you get prompted with, you get to see, is this nice little screen that gives you some quick access to different things in Linux Mint. So that's how you install. At this point, we have a fully functioning, working Linux Mint install. And the first thing I always recommend doing with any Linux install is do a system update. And with Linux Mint, it's this little shield icon right here, and you just click on it and you say install updates. It will ask you for your password. That's a security feature. So you type it and then authenticate, and it will install the updates. Unlike the Windows world, you don't have to worry about rebooting after installing these updates. Occasionally, updates will require a reboot, usually if it's a new kernel, but it's pretty rare. See, that update did have some other updates that need to be done, so we'll run it again. But notice I didn't have to reboot. I just have to do install updates again, and it'll start installing these. Password. And we can show the files that are being downloaded. As you can see, I have a pretty decent connection. Well, bounced between 8 megabits and 2, 3. Still pretty fast. Just depends on what's going on in the day. It is a cable modem. So, but normally it's pretty speedy. So now it's installing the packages that it just downloaded, as you can see from the details. So my next episode will be customizing your desktop, and we'll cover some of the basic apps. The default web browser that comes with Linux Mint is Firefox. I'm not a big fan of Firefox, so I'll show how to install Chromecast. You can install Chromium, which is an all open source version of Chromecast, but I prefer the Google supported version of Chromecast. So I'll show how you can do that, and give a little tour of Linux Mint as a desktop. And that will be our next episode, and I thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this. Please give a thumbs up if you liked it, and please subscribe to my channel. It's a new channel. This is only my second video, and I just love to teach this stuff. Been doing Linux for a long time, and it's time to share the knowledge. Anyways, peace out.